everything there, but I'll try to bring some things here. First of all, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18 years old, finished high school, Greensburg High School. I graduated in Greensburg. And went to boot camp in Paris Island, South Carolina, and spent 12 weeks there at boot camp. Right after boot camp, they packed our bags up and we put them on a train, went to Norfolk, Virginia, got on the ship, and we're gone. So we got on the ship, USS Wakefield, 5,000 Marines on the ship. We went down through the Panama Canal and from there to Hawaii. Going through the Panama Canal, about 400 Marines got food sick. They had scrambled eggs from the day before. Unfortunately, I wasn't one of them. But then we stopped at Balboa and got refueled, more food. Went to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, docked there for 3 days, and they again resupplied. And from there I went on to China. Tsingtao, China, they left off 1,000 Marines at Tsingtao, which is about the central part, east central of China, and our ship then picked up anchor. We went up towards Tientsin. About 20 miles from Tientsin, out in the harbor, they dropped anchor, and 3,000 other Marines got off at Tientsin. That's where I got off, and that's 60 miles south of the Great Wall, Peking, China. Now they call it Beijing. 60 miles south of it, and I stayed there for 9 months. I was in China, and we had 50,000 Japanese prisoners that were captured there, and had to shake them down and repatriate them back to Japan. So that was our duty there, and of course all the ships that came in with the SO 50-gallon oil drums, they unloaded thousands of oil drums on their LSMs and LSTs for supplying the military in China, in east and north of China. So when I left China, we came back around close to Alaska, and it was a northern route. They say that was the shortest way to come back. And that was on this ship here, A.E. Anderson, an APA with 1,500 men on the ship. That was a lot more comfortable traveling on that ship than the one that had 5,000 on. On the 5,000 ship, by the time you got through eating breakfast, it was time to get in line to go for lunch. And there wasn't much to breakfast and wasn't much for lunch either. Merchant Marine had that ship, and that's why a lot of Marines don't like Merchant Marines, unfortunately. They didn't feed us too well. And at lunchtime we'd have maybe a bowl of soup and then maybe a half an apple, not a whole apple, a half an apple. But they would open up the PX, they would sell a nickel candy bar for $1, and that tore a lot of Marines up. And this is why they had some problem with Merchant Marines afterward. They really made it kill them. But my duty in China was really, really good. I enjoyed it, being 18 years old, and a lot to see. I did see the Great Wall from the air in 1946, and I said, I gotta come back here and take a walk on that. I didn't know it would take me 50 years to go back. But I did go back to China in 1987. I wanted to go back there mid-70s, 77, 78, and they wouldn't allow any visitors where I wanted to go. They had an earthquake in Tientsin, 250,000 people got killed there. And the building I lived in while I was there was a warehouse, a Japanese warehouse, 2-story cement and brick, nice and cool in the winter and very hot in the summer. But we lived along the Hi-Ho River, and the duty there was taking care of the troops that were there. I was in motor transport. I maintained vehicles, I worked on vehicles there, and we maintained food for the divisions that would come there, 1st Marine Division, and all the regiments needed their food. They came into where I was at. the Hi-Ho River, the LSMs would come up the river where the big transport ships would not. So when I came back from there, I told you I was going up north towards Alaska and northern part, and we could see whales outside. I'll tell you, that was quite a sight to see a school of whales. And I didn't want to run down and get my camera because I was 5 decks down in that ship, and by the time you get up, it'd be gone. So I just stayed out there and took all the view in through my eyes and kept it to the rest that way. But the whales was something to see. When I got back to the States, I took a troop train from San Diego to Great Lakes, Illinois, and Naval and Marine Corps are stationed there. Then I was stationed in Washington, D.C., 8th and I. You might have heard of the Marine Corps Band and the 8th and I parades that they have every Friday night during the summer. I was stationed there, and duty was great. But Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, this was after World War II, they were bringing veterans back to be buried at Arlington Cemetery. Wednesday would be the Army, Navy, Thursday, and Marine Corps Friday. I said to myself, I don't really want to do this every week. So I checked the schools that were available, and I got asked for a transfer to go to North Carolina Motor Transport Auto Mechanics School. Went down to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, 1949, January 49 when the school started, and 26 weeks of school of auto mechanics. After about 3 months there, one of the warrant officers came to me and says, "Would like to keep you here as an instructor." And he says, "Your promotions will be really good here." I said to myself, I want to do some traveling after this. And he said again, "Promotions will be good here." I said, "I'll stay." Because to make corporal in the Marine Corps at that time, when all the high senior rank people were staying in, no room to move up. So it would take you 5, 6 years to make corporal at that time. So I made corporal pretty fast, about 3 years. By the time I left there, I was in 3 different sections of the school, learning from one subject to the other. That way I became proficient in all of them. Better for myself and better to run shops. By the time I left there, I was a staff sergeant. Korean War was going on pretty good. And in 1951, I tried to get a transfer to go to Korea, and every time my name would come down or some of the other staff NCOs from Washington, D.C., the colonel of the school would call headquarters of the Marine Corps, "Cancel. We need the people here." Every 4th day, we were starting a new class of 70 Marines. And that was a lot of teaching, but I loved it. So in 1952, the orders came down for me and 3 other Marines to be transferred to Korea through California staging area. The colonel was home on leave, and we got out of there. But it was good to go because at that time they put a K in front of your serial number. K means you were in Korea. When the promotion board would come up, your name would be there with your serial number and a K. You got preference, which wasn't fair, but that's the way they operated. So I said, I wanted a K. Not a K-I-L-L, I just wanted a K. So we got to Korea. I was in 1st Armored Amphib Battalion. These were tracked vehicles. Tracked vehicles that would come off the sea into the landing, and we were right across the river, the Han River in North Korea. North Korea was here, and we were right here, right across. We could see them through goggles and glasses, and they could see us. We could shoot them and knock them out, but they couldn't shoot too well. Glad of that. But they would shoot at our territory day and night when they had an opportunity. But 1st Armored Amphib Battalion, I was in motor transport again. I was a battalion motor transport chief. Took care of all the vehicles in the Able, Baker, and Charlie Company that were out closer to the front lines of the peninsula I was at. the Marine Corps unit that was here protected the Kimball Air Base, which was Air Force base behind us. That way, if anybody wanted to come across the river, we had it first. They wouldn't get to the airport and knock out the jets. So we were their protectors. And after a year, my tour was up and I came back to the States. I went back to motor transport school, which was good duty. So I went to school there again as an instructor. And after being there for a short time, I was transferred to Wyoming, Pennsylvania, Marine Corps Reserve Training Center, which is up the road about 100 miles from Harrisburg. Yeah, about 100 miles, I think. So I was there for 3 years. Again, I was in charge of the maintenance of the vehicles, plus teaching the reserves every weekend. They would come in Monday night, and we would teach them auto mechanics. They would start on an engine, and we would go through the whole vehicle after their 2 or 3 years there. But they would take an engine apart, and wherever they had it apart, next time they would come in, they would continue either taking it apart or putting it together. And in the meantime, we would teach them what they were taking apart and how it worked, and show them film, practical application, back to the engine. So I did that for 3 years. When I got transferred from there, oh, by the way, I made tech sergeant there, another rank, E6. So when I got transferred from there back to motor transport school, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, now, make it short, I had 4 tours there in the same company. I was a student there in late 48, started school in 49. 1968, I was the principal of the school at that time. So in 20 years, I thought I did pretty good. From enlisted man, I made warrant officer. When I was a warrant officer, 30 days, I was transferred to 2nd Marine Division because they don't like to keep you in the outfit that you were there as an enlisted man. They want to put you somewhere else. No favoritism, as Jim would know. They don't like people serving there with the troops that you had, that you lived with and talked with and ate with and so forth. And they figured you'd have favoritism, which happens. So I was transferred to 2nd Marine Division, Motor Transport Maintenance Company. I was only there 30 days. I got transferred back to the school. Within 20 hours, I was on a plane going to Vietnam. While I was at the motor transport school, my last tour, I worked on a multi-fuel engine, an engine that would burn 7 different kinds of fuels without much loss of horsepower. And it was fuel injected, which I have an injector here, but this is from a smaller truck. This engine would burn 7 different kinds of fuels and without loss of much horsepower. It had a fuel density compensator on the fuel injection pump that would adjust the volume of fuel because of the thickness and the weight, how much fuel would be needed into that cylinder to fire to give you the fire, which was pretty interesting. So I took a fuel injection pump at home one weekend and with a hacksaw, I cut it apart. I looked at, as I learned myself or taught myself how to do this, I cut out pieces what the students could see and how it operated. And that's what I used for training the fuel injection pump that I cut. But the diesel engine of multi-fuel and how they would use this at every aviation bases, when a jet plane would come in for repair, they would drain the fuel. And before this engine, they would discharge the fuel and throw it away. Now you could use this fuel, mix it with gasoline or kerosene or diesel, and save all that money of fuel from being thrown away. So we had that engine for about 20 years in the military, and I don't know why they got rid of it. I had wrote and told them school buses that had problems. They have diesel fuel or an oil, they could put that engine in that bus and then use both kinds of fuels and save some money. This is 1970 now I'm talking about. But after 20 years, they got rid of that engine, got a bigger diesel engine, larger, that would work in the trucks and also tanks. So principles were the same. But the multi-fuel engine would burn that fuel. So, and in Vietnam, some of you might have been there early 60s, 66, 67. They had the engine out there and the truck, nobody knew how to repair it. So that's why I was transferred in 38 back to school. We had an engine devised and ready to go teach on the East Coast in 1966, the West Coast in 67, and in 68 I was going to go to the Asiatic country, Japan, Korea, places like that. So in 66, they said, okay, we need you in Vietnam now. So I had a set of orders, phone call, like today, tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the morning, be at Cherry Point, North Carolina. Your plane's going to California, from there to Vietnam. I said, thank you very much. But I had a new car. I bought a new car 4 days before that, not knowing I was going to go. But that was a good thing I bought it. But while my wife was taking me to the airport, the rear window fell out. I said, oh boy, I'm going to have to put a good start. Problem leaving a couple children home with her, and the window falls out of a new car. I said, okay, start praying. So we got to California, real emergency, get out there right away, because they needed us to teach. The vehicles were going to heck because of the dust and dirt and mud there, and nobody knew what to do. So, okay, we get to California, stay there for 3 days, because they needed ammunition more than they needed us. They were C-130s, were flying out there with ammunition and food to Vietnam. They had some big battles going on. Harvest Moon was one of them. I don't know if you remember, anybody might have heard of that one. That was going on. So we left there after 3 days in California, and from there we went to Hawaii, stayed there overnight, refueled the plane, and from Pearl Harbor we flew to Guam, and from Guam, let's see, Wake Island was in between. One of the engines went out of the C-130, and I had 5 men with me and 15,000 pounds of gear. An engine, my training film, my books, and stuff like that I needed to teach with. So the pilot says, if another engine goes out, he's throwing my gear out. I said, if you throw the gear out, I might as well go home. Only worth a darn with nothing. And overnight they repaired the engine. The generator went out on the engine area, and they repaired that C-130 and took off from Wake Island. Went into Da Nang, and boy, when they dropped the tailgate down on that C-130, the heat just come in there. It was like a pizza oven. I mean, it was hot. And the person that was supposed to meet me, he was an R&R in Japan. So nobody knew what the heck to do. But being in motor transport school so many years, and I got to know a lot of officers, so I seen the sergeant that I knew was driving there. I said, take me to Division Motor Transport Officer. And I happened to know him, Lieutenant Colonel. And I said, here's the situation. Major so-and-so isn't at the air base to meet me. He's in R&R duty, we heard. So, okay, you got the sergeant major. They give us a place to stay. And the outfit I was supposed to go to the first day for training, which was a tank battalion near Da Nang. And the first night there, we were in our area. It wasn't quite dark yet. The sappers came down the river and blew up a couple buildings and a bridge, and then action was started right away. So all night long we sat our night in the foxhole, and so I had to be ready to teach the next morning. And so we did, and each week we went to a different outfit. And the danger of traveling by road was too dangerous, so they flew us to the different stations, either to Chu Lai, Dong Ha, Phu Bai, and all those places. And I stayed about 3 months altogether in Vietnam, the first tour teaching. So after going to all those bases, which again, being in motor transport so long, I knew a lot of people, and we got pretty good accommodations that you can get in Vietnam, good food and all that stuff. And then Chulai was the best place for duty. They had white sand there, and the Marine Aviation Unit was there. But they got bombed a lot, mortared a lot, because it was the air base. I said, how soon can we get out of here? This is not a safe place to be. So from Vietnam, excuse me a minute. We went to Iwakuni, Japan, and taught Japanese maintenance there. I had an interpreter that would interpret what the instructors would say to their Japanese mechanics, and then in the meantime, after lessons, then we went to practical application. We took an engine apart and then put it back together. We only took it down to the halfway, took the heads off of the engine, and then put it back together with the instructions how to take care of it. So that was pretty good there in Iwakuni, Japan. Then from there, we went back to El Toro, California, Marine Air Base there, did the same thing there. And then when I finished there, we went to Camp Lejeune or Cherry Point with our material, haul us back to the Motor Transport School, which is at Camp Johnson, they call it now. It used to be called Montford Point. You may have read places where that was the first black boot camp for the Marines. It was called Montford Point at that time. But then when I was there later, it was Camp Johnson. So I was there a couple of days, and of course my orders were to go back to 2nd Marine Division where you came from. I said, that's good. So I went there, and in 2 weeks' time, I got a set of orders, go back to Vietnam. I said, okay. This time I had a little more time to pack up. Went home and told my wife this time, I said, when I go, I won't be coming back right away. And that was very good news, but being a career Marine, and she was a career wife of a Marine, and she enjoyed it too. But when I got to California, they had a staging area there, and the colonel said, you're not going to Vietnam, you're going to Okinawa. They're building a building there. By the time you get there, it'll be built, where you're going to have a place to rebuild multi-fuel engines. Okay, that was my main business. So I got to Okinawa. At this time, I was pretty familiar there because I was stationed there in 1963, 3rd Service Battalion, Motor Transport Chief there. But in 67, when I went back to Okinawa, the building was about completed, and by the time I got set up what I was going to do with the Okinawans and teach them how to do the multi-fuel engine, the building was done. I had 75 Okinawan mechanics on Okinawa. They rebuilt bumper to bumper of that vehicle. Everything but do the body work. They did the engine, the transmission, the transfer case, the rear end, and all the powertrain. I had that. And the buildings or the engines that would get blown up in Vietnam, they would come up to Okinawa in metal cans. Maybe you would tear 3 apart and have enough to do one, enough of parts left over to do one, and throw the other ones away. But on Okinawa, while I was there, and now a year has passed almost. And they says the people in Vietnam need help on repairing that engine and taking care of that engine. Nobody transferred the information to the new guys that came in. So I had to teach 4 other guys how to take care of this engine, how to take care of the maintenance of it, and what to do. So we made another engine on a block, on a piece of metal that could spin around, run it after we're done putting it back together. Same thing I had before. And I went back to Vietnam from Okinawa to teach maintenance of the multi-fuel engine. So I went there, and in Da Nang again, Penang, Chu Lai, Phu Bai, Dong Ha. And then they sent me to an army base, which was outside of Da Nang. I don't even remember the outfit now, it was the army. And do the same thing and teach them. And they had a couple of Coast Guard there also that were maintenance of multi-fuel engine. So we taught them also. So I went, there was there a month, then to Chu Lai, then to Phu Bai, and then to Dong Ha. Dong Ha was about 4 or 5 miles from the EMZ. And when the B-52s came over from Guam and did the bombing, I'll tell you what, 5 miles away, the ground would rattle. I said, well, I'm glad they could hit this spot. Don't make a mistake. But Dong Ha. So after that tour was over, another 3 months gone by, went back to Okinawa to run my maintenance shop that I had been assigned to in 1967. And couldn't get any parts. Couldn't get any parts. I had the FSN numbers, so I'd go to see the supply officer and tell him what I need. Bearings for the engine to put it together, and crankshafts, whatever you might need to put an engine together. So they got a hold of the supply division officer down in Vietnam, down in Ben Hoi, and they had parts. That was a big supply depot for all of Vietnam. So I went down there with, again, with stock numbers that I needed. And I couldn't send an engine to Vietnam unless it had a clutch attached to it. So that was the stock number. The FSN for that particular engine had to have a clutch. So all the parts that I needed, I had FSN numbers. I went down to Vietnam, to Ben Hoi, and I said, give me 100 of them, 100 of them. They put them in these boxes, pallet boxes, and I got 14,000 pounds of parts. And they put it to the airport. They took it to Tan Son Nhut, which was close to the base I was at. I slept on top of that gear because when it leaves, I'm going with it. I didn't want to make sure nobody else took it. But anyhow, I flew out of there Thanksgiving Day, 1967, out of Vietnam. Along that freight line was caskets of 21 dead veterans that they flew on the same plane. But when I got to Okinawa, they unloaded my material, and them dead veterans stayed on the plane because that plane went to the States eventually. From there to Hawaii, back to the States. There's a photograph of the Vietnam island there. I call it an island because it was nothing but around water all the way around. Swamp in the front, swamp in the back. And when it didn't rain, it was dust and mud. So you were really in a mess. After leaving Vietnam at that time with all my material, I went back to Okinawa, as I said, and continued working on the engine shop. We had a goal of putting 200 engines out of, or bust, little thermometer, supply I like to use. And I had a crew that worked 24 hours a day running the engines over the dynamometer, making sure they would perform all the horsepower that they would after we rebuilt them. So we did get up to 200 one month. General Krulak came in from Hawaii. He was the commanding general of the Far East, General Victor Krulak. They had him visit my area, and I took him through the shop, and Commandant of the Marine Corps was with him. They went through my shop, and they asked me how long I'd been there, when am I due to go back? And I told him, he says, you can leave tomorrow. So after all my duties, I got to leave Vietnam, or Okinawa a little early. In the meantime, while I was in Okinawa, I transferred from warrant officer to second lieutenant, an LDO, which is called limited duty officer, motor transport. So I made second lieutenant, and there I was with like 35 years old as a second lieutenant. That looked pretty sharp with a bunch of medals on me, Now, how can that be, the guys would say, I said, well, it's a long story. I don't have time to tell you. So I went back to the States, and where do I go? Motor Transport School. In the academic section this time. So I was assistant academic officer, and then the captain that was the academic officer became the executive officer, and he got promoted to major, and then I became the academic officer. As I said, in 20 years I became the academic officer from a student to academic. Now the fun part of my tour of being a Marine, 59, 60, 61, 62, I was a recruiter in Sunbury, which is up the road from Harrisburg, about 50, 60 miles, I guess. And I had 5 counties as my duty station, only recruiter in 5 counties. It also had a mental institution, and a federal prison. That counted as population for a quota. Me and the sergeant major would go round and round about that. I said, how am I going to get him out of the mental hospital and the federal prison? He said, you got a quota. Okay, thank you very much. So I got the quota. My quota was like only 2 when I got there in April of '59. I gave him 3. They raised it to 3, I gave him 4. They raised it to 4, I gave him 5, and that was a mistake because they kept raising me up. June of 1961, they put out a contest. The Marine recruiter that had the most recruits in that month. Now, 4 days already passed in June, and they put out a program. They would give 5 days expenses up at the Pocono Manor. Some businesses were going to support the program, all expenses paid. Well, I didn't have to work too hard because I sandbagged a lot of them. I kept them in the side because they wanted to go whenever I was ready to send them. They weren't in a big hurry, so I sandbagged them. So that month of June of '61, I gave them 33 men. 33 men, and they could not believe it. But I did. I got a meritorious mass out of that. I made warrant officer out of that program. I got to go to Pocono Manor for 5 days. I had the A flag. Jim's seen my A flag at my house. I had it 30 months out of 36 from being on recruiting. They says, when you leave, you can take it with you because you had it the most. You had it all the time. So I took the E flag home, and I still have it hanging in my basement with all my other material. I had the E flag so many times, they used the mayor of the city of Sunbury to present it to me, the mayor of Wilkes-Barre to present it to me, and a couple of commanding officers from Philadelphia to come in because they didn't want the same people presenting the flag to me, which I didn't care who gave it to me as long as I got it. Because that was extra money. You got $30 extra a month for proficiency. So that was needed on recruiting duty because the cleaning was pretty expensive, cleaning your uniform. Going to high schools, I had 2 former Marines who were drill instructors at Parris Island that taught judo at Parris Island. So we would go to these high schools and put on judo demonstrations. And they were going to Bloomsburg State Teachers College at that time. That's what it was called. And we put them in colleges, Lewisburg has this college there, and Susquehanna and Selinsgrove and Bloomsburg at college. So we put on demonstrations. All I did was introduce them, told them what they did in Parris Island, and they put on the show. But I got recruits out of men and women. My total recruiting for 3 years was 244 men and 13 women, and all by myself. So that I did everything, knock on wood, turn to gold. And a lot of people don't have that good luck. let's go now to 1969, when I was at motor transport school, and I had about enough of the school too. And now I'm getting prepared to find something to do when I retire. I was planning on retiring down the road, which is soon. Commanding officer said, "Where would you like to go?" I said, "Any place north of the Mason-Dixon line, because that's where I want to live when I get out of the Marine Corps." So they checked a couple places called Washington, D.C., and guess what was open? Wyoming, Pennsylvania, where I was in '54 when I came back from Korea. So I was the executive officer there. Since then, I made first lieutenant as the motor transport officer there at the Wyoming, Pennsylvania. So in 69, 70, 71, and early 72 when I retired. 71, I took the reserves to El Toro, California. We went out there for 2 weeks, being a motor transport outfit, and we were wing repair, squadron repair for helicopters. We supported their motor transport in that wing. We went to El Toro, California, and all I had to do in the morning is make sure everybody was there for duty. They took the roll call, and I would call in the headquarters of Wyoming, all present or accounted for. While we were there, we had an earthquake. So that was interesting. February of '71, they had an earthquake. So after we called roll and made sure everybody was okay, I called back and told them everybody's okay. Now call my wife and tell her, because she was living in Aberdeen, Maryland at that time, because I was going to get a job there teaching auto mechanics at Aberdeen Proving Ground. So they called and told her that we were in an earthquake, but everything's okay. She said, "Okay, thank you." Hung up the phone. I guess she realized what happened. And she called back to the train and said, "What'd you say?" Yeah, there was an earthquake in El Toro, California, but everybody's okay. So Wyoming, Pennsylvania. Now, while I was there, executive officer, commanding officer was a major. We took a week at a time being duty officer. Duty officer there was, in case somebody got killed in Vietnam, we would be the ones that go tell next of kin. And whether it be enlisted man or an officer would go, and I always took a corpsman with me, because some of the people that were a little aged and needed help. So I took a corpsman, went to Hazleton, Pennsylvania. The helicopter pilot got shot down in Laos in '71 also. And they had a flyover, and the helicopters that were there all got blown up. And they had a flyover and checked, and they counted bodies on the ground. And he said, "Everybody's dead." And they reported the pilot happened to be from Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which was in Wyoming area, because we had 45 miles radius around us who we took care of in case of emergency. So we went and told the mother that her son was killed, and all the routine. They made arrangements for services, because memorial services, there was no body. We had 19 days later, usually insurance papers would be ready, and we had memorial services, insurance papers and all. That morning, we got a call from Washington, D.C. The young man's alive. He walked from Laos to Da Nang, the hospital, all burned up. So I got the message, and we drove out to Hazleton, and I had an appointment like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I got there like 10:30 in the morning or 11 o'clock. And the lady says, "What are you doing here? It's early." I said, "I have some good news for you." She's like, "Dude." Give me a big hug. We went in and talked and patched her phone from Washington, D.C. to Da Nang Hospital, where this guy was staying. First thing he said to her was, "Happy birthday," which was her birthday that day. Second thing, "Did you sell my vet yet?" So everybody got a kick out of that part of it. But I got to meet him like 5 or 6 months later. He was still scarred up from the burns of the helicopter burn. What happened, the helicopter got hit in the air and blew up, Then when it hit the ground, the other fuel, I guess, blew up, and nothing was found of the guys. So 72, well, late 71, I put in a request for retirement. While I was being promoted as an officer, I was also being promoted as an enlisted man, in case I ever wanted to revert back. Now I'm up to E9 in enlisted rank and up to captain in the officer rank. So I retired in 72, and in the Marine Corps you had to have 10 years commission time before you can retire as an officer. And as an officer you have to spend 30 years in the Marine Corps. So when I got discharged, I didn't have 30 years in yet because, again, I would have been transferred to the Far East, and I've been there enough. I didn't want to go back to the Far East. 2 tours in Okinawa, tour in Korea, a couple of tours in Vietnam. And I said, my luck's pretty good. I think I'll get out. I think I'll get out. So I got out, and of course, went to Aberdeen. I built a house next to my brother, who was an Army veteran down there stationed. And the job that I was going to get as an auto mechanic instructor, no more. Jobs were done. They completed one whole shift and just sewed it up. The Vietnam War was dying down, winding down, and the job wasn't available. I said, okay, I'll find something. 30 days after I got out, read the newspaper. A company in New York had an ad in the paper for a heavy equipment supervisor, diesel mechanic, auto maintenance. Boy, right up my alley. So I sent in my resume to Yorkstone Supply Company. And 12 people applied, 3 got interviewed, and I got the job. And while I got that job and doing that motor transport maintenance there, and I taught them how to pull engines out, how to rebuild engines. That saved them a lot of money. We did clutch work, and fortunately, Charles might have lost some money over that deal because we used to send their stuff down to him or to the Rio shop, Parker's, and Mack truck. We had 20 Mack trucks, and we did a lot of maintenance there. That saved the company a lot of money. Of course, that made me money because I got promoted there as time went by. So I stayed 10 years there and decided, well, okay, 55 years old, all my friends were dying of Agent Orange, and I figured I better retire and spend some time with the family. They're getting late teenagers now. And after I got out of that, I said, what am I going to do now? I did all my work that I could do and got promoted as much as I could. So I got involved with the York County Joint Veterans Council. I became commander of the Joint Veterans Council. I was a commandant of the Marine Corps League about 3 times. I was a commander of VFW about 12 years. And at one time I was commander of VFW and the commandant of the Marine Corps at the same time. What happened, the guy that I gave my job up to VFW, 15 days later he dies at the golf course. That where they're going to put the new memorial. What's the name of that place there? The golf course.
Okay.
And he died because he was the caretaker there, and he died. And I said, okay. They wanted me back as commander of the VFW and the commandant of the Marine Corps League. I said, I can do it, no problem. In the meantime, I might have been either a commander or something at Joint Veterans Council. So while I was involved with that, the Joint Veterans Council, we combined a campaign for a 50th anniversary of 50th end of World War II. I was the chairman of that. So back in 1991, we started getting prepared for that. And we took main battles of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Marine Corps. And every quarter we did one. And by the time the 50th year came up, we had the monument already done, manufactured at Continental Square that sits there today. I was on that committee, and we did that, and we had a commandant of the Marine Corps come in and give the speech. James Jones, he was the commandant that did that. So we did that, and then I was on the Korean Commemorative Committee. There were 7 of us, 2, 4, 6, 7 of us on the Korean Commemorative Committee. And of course, I was with them as a treasurer for 2 years. Since I knew how to make money for the World War II job, they gave me this one for the Korean job. Turned that over to Ron Boozer and his group, and then they put the monument by Doris Creek. And we're talking, Barry Shep and myself and a few others, well, the Vietnam War, a lot of people are dying, Agent Orange. Let's work on a monument for the Vietnam veterans before they all pass and not see it, like World War II guys. It was pretty late. A lot of them were passed, and they didn't get to see it. So we got on the Vietnam committee, again, fundraiser chairman, that's what I was. So we come up with a brick program, $100 per brick, and get your name put on, or if you want to represent somebody else, or a company represent their company, buy a brick and help us support the Vietnam Veteran Memorial. We got that done, and in 2009 we had the dedication. I think it was 2009. October, beautiful day. Beautiful warm day, almost 90 degrees. And we even had the eagle fly by. I don't know if you were there. We didn't put that on a program, but it flew by. Everybody thought we did. But there was an eagle flew over our program while we were having it that day. Some of you might have been there. But that eagle flew over, and they got pictures of it, a shot of it, real good. So I've been busy after retirement. Just past January, I've been retired out of the Marine Corps 44 years, and in May I'll be 89 years old. So I have a lot of photographs here you can take a look at. Some of you, I'm sure, might have been in Hawaii. Diamond Head. You always see Diamond Head for Hawaii. But there's a tunnel there where the National Guard is stationed in the center of that Diamond Head. National Guard, that's where they're stationed. I visited that place.
Do you want to take a few questions?
I was going to say one more thing, and then I'll take questions. I have a brother retired from the Army 31 years. He just died last year. He would have been 97 in December. I have a brother that retired from the Air Force. He had 26 years in. He died at 80 years old. Then at that time, I was 35 or 36 years old. We were at Aberdeen Proving Ground, and this general of the Aberdeen heard we were on the base together. He called us in and took a photo of us all together. So 3 of us served. And my youngest brother would have joined the Navy, but he had rheumatic fever. So he was going to go to Navy. We were going to cover them all. Now I'm ready for questions. Questions? I can give you a little more. Nadia Comaneci. Nadia Comaneci. You know who that is? Jim Girl and O'Connor. They were here in the York area, York International, and I happened to meet them and got a photo taken with them at the York at the hotel, Yorktown Hotel. While I was working at York Stone and Supply, we come up with a program on using oil that could be longer than 5,000 or 6,000 miles in a truck engine, and I devised that. I've been in 7 or 8 magazines with the York and York Stone Supply equipment. Heavy front-end loaders, 10-yard front-end loaders and Euclids, diesel trucks, and also bulldozers. So I was in a lot of truck magazines. They said I had a lot of training in the Marine Corps publicity, but that's what it takes. Here's some of the shots of the loaders loading out. Golf representative Mike Fleming. big spread of the magazine. Okay, I'm ready for any questions you might have.
You told me one time you met Chesty Puller.
Oh, yeah. In 1962, he was lieutenant colonel then. We were in Pittsburgh. I represented the regular Marine Corps at the Marine Corps League State Convention. I was in Sunbury, but they sent me to Pittsburgh to be the representative for the Marine Corps. And he was there as, not as a guest speaker, but he was just there as a visitor. 1st Marine Division was having their reunion, plus a state convention for the Marine Corps League, and Chesty Puller was there. Quite a guy. Of course, he retired as a lieutenant general, and real great Marine. He had 5 Navy crosses. 5 Navy crosses. Never got the Congressional Medal of Honor. Nobody knows why not, but that's the way life went. I have some photos here of my first driver's license in China, permit in North Carolina, ID card from 1945. Then they put a hole through it. You can carry it with your dog tag around your chain. I had a hole in my dog tag or ID card. I have maybe 15 magazines in my trunk of China news. I can donate them to you, and if you want to keep them, you can have them, because I've read them enough, and somebody else might be able to read them.
That was, what year was that?
This one here, the particular one, was, I don't have it in front. This was an album, or the book of 1819 to 1949. But I have them from every month that they come out years ago when that organization was in operation, China Marine Association.
Any questions?
Yes,
I'm thinking of you talking about going down to Benoit and getting stuff. I was a 2G, and I used to go down once a week for topographic service. And I found out about the depot down there because we couldn't get filters, we couldn't get anything. We were washing it out and hanging them up at nighttime. Carefully. Probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but you know how dusty it was. So.
you got to do what you got to do. But that was a shame. They had the parts there that we couldn't get to do for Okinawa. I'm rebuilding engines, sending them down there, and they get blown up. Then I have to go down there to get the parts to come back to build. And you had to send a truck down, new truck, complete, the new windshield in a box. They would fold it over and protect it from getting damaged. But yet, when it was on a ship, somebody would walk on it and bust the windshield.
Oh, wow.
But one came back that had like 8 miles on it. It was blown up. You know how they put the 155 or 105 bombs in, or artillery in the ground, detonate them and go right up through the engine or through the floor. The guys, they didn't wear their flak vest, they sat on it.
Yeah.
Because that would protect them from underneath material coming up. Yeah.
Anything else? Well, we want to thank you. And great job.